Hi, my name is Hannah and I am about to embark on my first time reading A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas. Last year I read and vlogged my experience of reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, the first book in this series. And I said, this isn't going to be a plot summary video because Carrie over at Carrie Can Read, who's wonderful, has already done like the best executed plot summaries I've ever seen. And yet I accidentally did a plot summary along with commentary. Now, what I'm going to do this time is not make any promises about what the fuck this video is going to be. All I know, me, Hannah in the past, knows is that I'm about to read this book. So I'm really hoping that future Hannah, who's done the thumbnail and title for this video, has named it something that accurately describes what this experience is going to be. For now, all I can tell you is that according to Bustle, we're about to have a darkly sexy and thrilling time, which I think is not what people normally come to my channel for, but I'm open if you are. So let's go. I really hope I can remember what fucking happened in book one. Let's go for it. Hello, hi, it's Hannah from the future. I'm here to be like your shamanic guide through this video. We start out reasonably well. I stay on task and then I do not stay on task. So I'll be cropping up at various points to help us join the dots and to move things along. In case it wasn't abundantly clear, this is going to be full spoilers. I have no filter and frankly no respect. Over and out. Haven't even fucking started yet. This book has 69 chapters. What? Hi. We've not got very far yet. I'm remembering probably about 60% of what I need to remember in order to understand what's going on, but that's okay. Essentially, we've got poor Feyre, who's like, this is starting 3 months after the first book. She's quite clearly traumatized by everything that went down. And her and Tamlin are not talking about their trauma, but they are getting married. So that seems rock solid as a foundation. And she's getting, she's chatting to this priestess and she's feeling, you just get the impression that she is envious of the freedom. She's sort of being kept inside. Tamlin's not letting her do anything. He's being like paternalistic as fuck, to be honest. I was cooling on him by the end of the last book and he's not doing much to bring me back round. But anyway, the reason I was talking to you is because Feyre and Tamlin got engaged a month after shit went down at the end of the last book. And Feyre is just like recounting it in her head about how it was the happiest day of her life or something. And she says, I'd wept with joy as I told him, yes, 1,000 times yes. Which, if that is not just straight up stolen from Jane and Bingley in the 2005 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure those words have appeared elsewhere. But it feels pointed, because like, Feyre's not a Jane, Feyre's a Lizzie Bennet. So it's subtle, but I'm pretty sure I'm onto something. I also forgot that about the cauldron. I can't really remember what it is, but they do say like by the cauldron and cauldron blessed, the way some people would say, like, God. And every time I read it, I just think it's so silly. Fucking cauldron. I forgot that Sarah J Maas's favourite word for orgasm was shattered. Interestingly, that's also how she describes Feyre's trauma a lot of the time, that she'd been shattered. Shattering. Lots of shattering. 22 pages in. Sorry, they're kissing. A brush of his tongue against the seam of my lips had me opening fully for him, and he swept in. I moaned then, tilting my head back to give him better access. How far do you want him to sweep down your throat, babe? Christ alive. His tongue swept my mouth. Again. Well, it's page 21 and we have our first penis, so it's starting warmer than the last book did. Tamlin has just revealed the proud, thick length of him. Okay. I'm willing to sort of forgive Feyre her naivety, because she's basically a baby. But the idea that Tamlin thinks all of their problems are going to be over when they're married. Isn't he like hundreds of years old? Should we not expect better? No? No? So this is part of the problem with Lucian and Feyre, is like they have a lovely sexual chemistry if you're into all the stroking. But in between shatterings 2 and 3 in this episode, Feyre asks what her title will be, like if she'll have a title after they're married, because Tamlin's the High Lord. She's like, oh, I just don't want anyone to call me the High Lady. I don't think I could cope with that. And Tamlin's like, oh, they won't, because there's no such thing as a High Lady. So that's nice. Funsies. Oh, and then I think you got the sense that she was like, hold up a sec. But then he went down on her and she forgot. So what's a girl to do? Well, it's good to know that fantasy aristocracy is as fucking bullshit as real aristocracy. Just found out about something called the tithe, where Lucian's explaining it to Feyre and he's like, yeah, like everyone in the kingdom has to pay a tithe once a year, and we use that money, like it's implying that it's like a tax, but things like to keep the court running, you know, pay for food and servants. I'm like, great, fucking A. And basically one of Feyre's wifely duties is going to be to sit with Tamlin while these people come and pay their tithes, and if they can't pay them, watch him mete out punishment on them. Cool. Nice. I'm also pissed off at this idea that like everyone's like, oh, like Feyre's like, please let me out, let me have a life, let me have an existence, let me have some freedom. And they're all like, oh, after you're married, it's going to be so much better. And I'm like, do we not want to demonstrate to Feyre pre the wedding that this isn't just going to be her life? Or is that not something that we're going to do? What Feyre's still banging on about, like, she's clearly unhappy. There's all sorts of intimations that her life is not going to be the life that she wants, except for the fact that it will be with Tamlin, which is what she wants. And she keeps repeating like this mantra of, it's okay because we'll be married soon. It's okay because after the wedding. It's okay because... And what I hope Sarah J Maas is doing is a deliberate undermining of that attitude. That's what I hope she's doing. So, of course, how could we have an epic love triangle if she actually married Tamlin? So, she's about to marry him, she's walking down the aisle, she's freaking out, she stops, and then boom bash, there's Rhysand. Because there was that, I don't know, I guess there was some kind of bug and they struck. She's supposed to go stay with him a week out of every month, and he's just not called that in for 3 months. But anyway, he's here now. And whatever, she's like, oh my god, I can't believe Tamlin's gonna let me go, but he does. So they're not married, and she's been frittered away to the Night Court, which she describes as the most beautiful place she's ever seen. And should we be surprised? Because is that not exactly what she said about Rhysand when she saw him for the first time? Sarah gets to the Night Court and she's like, I get that she's been conditioned and everyone's told her, like, these are terrible people, they're like the absolute worst, they're just torture people and flay them and it's basically hell on earth. But that is also what the humans used to say about the Fae Kingdom. So we've already been on this ride once before of Feyre being like, oh my god, you're scary, and actually it's fine. So I'm just surprised that she was taken in by it again, because the Night Court's lovely. It's lovely. No one's getting tortured. And it turns out the reason Rhys did his surprise I object at the wedding was because of Feyre's little panic. He like felt it through their little tattoo connection. So he's just a good guy. He was just doing what she asked, because Tamlin is boring, even if he is super hot. Like sometimes Sarah J Maas forgets what she's written. Because like Feyre and Rhysand have just had this whole conversation at breakfast about like the bond that they have, not like the sexy bond, like the literal tattoo bond. The sexy bond will come later, I am sure. But like they've just had a whole conversation about it, the fact that he can see into her mind, the fact that he could teach her to shield if she wanted to. And then literally like a paragraph later, she writes, his gaze raked over me again, as if he could see beneath the peach fabric, through the skin, to the shredded soul beneath. Like, yeah, we've just had a conversation about the fact that he can do that. All right, not the soul, but he can see what you're thinking and he can sense what you're feeling. It's the same thing. So, yeah. Not as if he can. Dun, dun, dun. Maybe this means we're going to get some plot soon. Because, like, it has been... I know they've had the wedding, but it hasn't actually felt like anything has happened in this book yet. 68 pages in. It's feeling quite flat. It's feeling very flat. I remember the last one being like kind of a silly fun time. I'm waiting for the silly fun time to happen. Two things that I'm not enjoying. Firstly, I get that you need to withhold information to kind of keep the plot moving along and avoid like tons of exposition. But I hate that it's always like, whether it's Tamlin or Rhysand, it's always like a guy just like not telling her stuff. Sometimes for reasons that are justifiable or whatever. But it's always just like they have the information and they're not sharing it. And it's so frustrating. Like, I'm sure for Feyre, but also for me, the reader. And also, just like, and I get this a lot with like the massive age gaps that you get with like fae storylines or vampire storylines or whatever. But like, Feyre can't read. Well, she's got very rudimentary literacy skills. And Rhys is teaching her to read. And he's talking about this war, and he needs her skills, and we're deducing that she's going to need to be able to read to do part of whatever he needs her to do. But like, he's making her copy out sentences like, Rhysand is the most handsome High Lord. Rhysand is the most delightful High Lord. And I'm like, this is so juvenile. This person is supposed to be like old. And they're behaving like, not even like a teenager, like a pre-teen. So after the end of her week with Rhysand, she has to go back to the Spring Court, to Tamlin, obviously. And when she gets back, and I guess this is understandable, he's like, where? Tell me everything, because hardly anyone gets into the Night Court, and no one really knows everything about it, and obviously everyone thinks they're the spooky bad guys. So he just like interrogates her, and there's just not been a whiff of wedding chat, which I find suspicious. Feyre's just had her political awakening at the tithe, because obviously Tamlin is demanding that starving people give him food that they don't need because they're really rich because of tradition. And Feyre has discovered that she can get inside heads like Rhysand. She accidentally, a little bit on purpose, jumped inside Lucian's head because she wanted him to help her, I don't know why I'm filming this when I'm about to fall asleep, but she was standing up for herself against Tamlin, being like, these rules are stupid, those people were starving, I was once starving and had sisters to feed. And Lucian, you can sense, kind of wanted to back up Feyre because he's a good boy, but he's also like Tamlin's pet, and Tam doesn't really seem to respect him because Tam is a knob. And yeah, long story short, Feyre can read people's minds, get into them, and maybe manipulate them. Who knows? Hopefully that's the last update you'll get from me tonight. Do you know what I just have absolutely no time for? Tamlin. Tamlin full stop. But also, so he's like, Feyre's confronted him and been like, yo, if this is gonna work, you need to like, let me be a person, not like just this like sheltered, cloistered thing. And Tamlin explodes a room in rage. But Feyre's like sort of fine, and she's like, oh, maybe he was protecting me. And then she realizes, holy shit, she's built this like protective wall around her. So the like shielding that Rhys has been teaching her with Feyre is not just mental shielding. She can like put up like she can do a Bella Swan, you know, she can shield. Yeah, so she's getting loads of powers, but Tamlin's just like, oh, I'm so sorry, I just really struggle to control my rage. And his response to it all is, I'll try and be better, we'll move past this. And I hate the avoidance because he's never like tackling the fucking issue. He's just being like, oh, tomorrow will be better. I will do better tomorrow. Well, if you're not actively going to change anything, Tamlin, how exactly are you going to do better? And yes, I am pacing up and down my living room, for God's sake. Of course he didn't fucking mention it. Of fucking course. Like, props to Sarah J Maas though, because Feyre is now realizing, okay, there was a point in my life where this person and his way of protecting me and making sure that I was safe and kind of melting some of that hardness that she'd had to have because her life was really difficult. He was the person that I needed then. But maybe the person that we need at one point in our life is not the person that we need at other points in our life. And I respect that interpretation from Sarah J Maas, even if I do want to put Tamlin's head through a fucking window. Tamlin has trapped Feyre inside his court, like put this invisible shield up, other people can come and go, but she cannot. And that seems like a super cool thing to do to someone who was trapped underground and is suffering from acute PTSD. He's an arsehole. It's okay though, because Rhys shattered the shield, sent in his cousin Morrigan, and she's rescued Feyre and taken her back to the Night Court. Well done. To be fair, Rhys smells delicious. Sorry, it's terrible harsh lighting, but I think Feyre is finally learning some self-reflection. So her and Rhys are slowly starting to have a few non-sarcastic, non-super acerbic conversations. Like they're just mellowing a little bit and starting to kind of bring down some barriers. A prelude to I couldn't possibly guess what. And he's asked her what she's thinking. Like, he's like, I'll tell you something I'm thinking if you tell me something you're thinking. And Feyre says, I'm thinking that I was a lonely, hopeless person, and I might have fallen in love with the first thing that showed me a hint of kindness and safety. And I'm thinking maybe he knew that. Maybe not actively, but maybe he wanted to be that person for someone. And maybe that worked for who I was before. Maybe it doesn't work for who or what I am now. Well done. Step 1 of therapy complete. Good girl. One thing that I do struggle with though is that, and I know why she uses this word to describe them, but she describes the, like, Fae, like Rhysand, and we've just met Cassian and the other guy, Azriel. But she always describes them as males. And I know it's because they're not technically men, because they're fae. But it just makes me think of people who use the word females to describe women. And so I can't not read it in a disparaging tone. And it's tainting how I feel about the characters. So we're meeting, Okay, so we're meeting some of Rhys's inner circle at some dinner with Feyre, because she's gonna like figure out if she wants to fight with him or whatever, and learning things. So none of them. So there's like one freaky old woman who doesn't present as an old woman but is old because they're all fucking centuries old, who is like Feyre and is like maid, so like not naturally high fae, like something happened. She's creepy as fuck. And then there's the Bat Boys, Cassian and Azriel, who, I don't know, they have wings and they're salty. And then Morrigan, his cousin. And none of them were under the mountain because Rhys has kept the whole of Valeris a secret from Amarantha. Like, no one knows it exists. So Feyre's having like complex feelings about that, because she's basically like, these privileged people have like sat on their asses while like the rest of the world went to shit. But yeah, so hopefully they're gonna like go fight a war or something though, so it'll all be chill. Oh, okay, so like, sorry, it's freezing and we haven't got our heating on, that's why I'm like an Eskimo. I'm willing to sack off all of the romances, all the potential love interests, for the fact that Feyre has just recognised in Moore someone who could potentially be her first real friend. Sweetheart. Baby girl. Whoa, she doesn't half pace this book weirdly. So we're just having like a super long chapter where like Feyre's at dinner with like all of the inner circle people, and we're basically getting like everyone's backstory. And now just like boom, 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 loads of shit's going down. Well, I mean, they're still just sat at the table talking about it, but it's like the King of Highburn is gonna resurrect Jurian, and now that means we have to go and talk to the Bone Carver. And I'm like, what? Get this? It's like a paragraph, Sarah. Chill the fuck out. If anyone's going to the prison, Reese said before Moore opened her mouth, it's me and Feyre. What is going on, please? So like she's the one that the Bone Carver will talk to because she's got something to offer him because she's an immortal with a mortal soul. What's he gonna do to her soul? And classic Sarah J Maas ending to a chapter here. So they're like, Reese is like, it's your choice, you don't have to come, like it's your choice. And she's like, how bad can it be? And Cassian goes, bad. So I guess that's where we're going now. To the Bone Carver. Feyre's had a nightmare in which she wakes up to the smell of burning, and it turns out she has fiery hand powers. And Reese is like waking her up, being like, yo, it's just a dream, it's just a dream. And the fire comes from the High Lord of the Autumn Court, so wee boy Lucian's daddy. And basically, I don't even know if it's relevant, but we've got more Rhysand and Feyre trauma bonding, sharing their deepest, darkests from the time under the mountain. You get me. Rhys and Feyre are going to the prison, which is a rock which houses the foulest, most dangerous creatures and criminals that you can imagine. Fun. Oh, okay. We get to the prison, and Feyre has a little freak out because she's like, it's kind of like under the mountain, and she has like a little panic and is like, and Rhys just takes her back home. Well, back to Valaris, his home, not like home. Where is her home? Human realm? Not there. Greetings from my lunch break. I have just inhaled a bowl of pasta and now feel a bit sick, but I've been reading the book while I did that, and it's definitely a convoluty questy time coming up. So the Bone Carver was like, Feyre's probably going to be able to track down this book because she's a made object and she's got the power of the like all 8 lords or whatever. And Rhys is like, well, maybe she'll be able to track it, and I know a great test. So then we had to go see some weaver in the woods who's really creepy. Feyre's like there now. I just had to stop reading for work. But like, yeah, it's definitely a convoluted time. And also, I'm like, someone who actually understands the like world of ACOTAR, please feel free to chip in here, because I vaguely remember, and we know how bad my memory is, so like I could be wrong. I vaguely remember in the first book, they were talking about how like the Fae, because they're immortal, take ages to like grow up. And yet in all the backstories of the Bat Boys, they're all like talking about like how when they were like 7 and 11, like they're aging human rates. But I mean, I could be misremembering, but it feels like the law has changed. But yeah, also something like happened in the woods with Feyre and Rhys, which kind of annoys me. I've picked it up a couple of times where like Feyre's obviously like super hard on herself. She thinks she's like this monster because she killed those 2 Fae in the last book. But like anything she does, she's like, oh my God, I'm so awful. And she was like, you know, like Rhys had been flirting with her to she assumes to distract her from the fear of going to visit the Weaver, and definitely not just because he thinks she's hot. And she was like, maybe I was frustrated enough at Tamlin to even indulge in like flirting back with Rhys. God, I'm such a monster. I'm like, babe, are you like equating like flirting with someone when you're in the process of breaking up with someone else is the same as murder? I think you need to chill out, Feyre, for fuck's sake. The Weaver's house is thatched in hair. Oh, ick. Feyre was going to get trapped, but obviously she was going to escape because we're only 200 pages into the 600-page book, which is the second in, a series of 5, so she's already died once. So I imagine SJM can't just be killing her every 200 pages. That would get old eventually. The thing of Rhys's that Feyre had to get from the Weaver was a ring, his mother's ring, and I swear to God if that ends up being an engagement ring, please no. Rhys shows Feyre a memory of Ianthe, who is the priestess at the Spring Court, who was always kind of like acting like she was Feyre's friend, but actually was a bit like suspicious. And she basically is an absolute sex pest and keeps trying to shag all the men. And Rhys showed Feyre a memory of her propositioning him in his quarters about 100 years ago. And Feyre was like, she didn't seem to be like that at the Spring Court. And then she remembered that Lucian didn't like Ianthe. And she was like, oh my God, baby boy Lucian. Did she force you to have sex with her? My little fox boy. Autumn Court King. A lot has happened. I can't lie. This is officially, if it ever was, it's officially no longer a plot summary sort of situation because just a lot's happened. But there's a bit, like this whole like connection that Feyre and Rhysand have, like where he can show her memories. I hate how they're written. I hate it. I hate Rhys's voice. I like Rhys as a character when the book is told from Feyre's perspective, but the bits that are written from Rhys's perspective just feel so like clunky, expositional. I am saying what I'm supposed to say as the future love interest. I hate it. Like, so there's been a whole thing, like they've gone into the mortal world, something to do with queens, let's not get into it. Stayed with her sisters, not pleasant. Nesta, still a cow. And they go out hunting, Rhysand and Feyre, and it turns out Rhysand basically fucks off. And it becomes clear that he has kind of used Feyre as bait. And she gets captured by the Atta, and then like Bat Boys swoop in. She was never in any danger, but Rhysand had, what's that? Once again withheld information from her that she should have known. I wonder if that's going to be a pattern of behaviour. And it doesn't, like, it's fine. Bat Boys take the Atta away. Feyre's never in any actual danger. And now Rhys comes back. And Feyre's all prepared for him to be like Tamlin 2.0 and be like, I dealt with it. But because he's the good guy, bad guy, good guy, good guy, bad guy, Rhys is like, no, like, it's up to you. Like, if you want to know what we did to the Atta in order to, like, get the information that we got out of him, then, like, we can tell you that. And so he shares a memory with her, but within that memory, which is told from Rhys's perspective, but like Rhys's perspective as spied on by Feyre, it's not very well handled. But he's like, okay, here we go. I'm just going to read it from the beginning of, oh Christ. So
from Rita's perspective, but as observed by Pharaoh. So, tell me how you tracked her, Azrael said in the quiet voice that had broken countless enemies. We'll take your word for it. I, Reese, leaned against the far wall of the holding cell, arms crossed. Azrael crouched before where the Atta was chained to a chair. In the centre of the room, a few levels above, the Court of Nightmares revelled on, unaware their High Lord had come. I'd have to pay them a visit soon, remind them who held their leash. That's Reese. Soon, but not today. Not when Pharaoh winnowed. Oh, she winnowed earlier. I guess that was a plot point. And she was still pissed as hell at me. Rightly so, if I'm being honest. Can we just agree that, like, no one's internal monologue sounds like that, especially not Risan's? It just seems like the way we maneuver these interesting complex characters into a romance arc is to just make them fucking wet. Like, they're either super problematic or they're wet. I wish there was another option.
It's just like a weird, like, side mention of the boys talking about sports. That just, given that no sport in the world has ever been described, ever, in the 2 books that I've read so far, feels like such a lazy, like, bro commentary. You can probably tell that I'm losing patience. I think I started this, like, checking in, like, every fucking, like, other page. And now it's, like, every 30 pages. And it's not to do with the pace of the plot. Because, like, lots is happening. But none of it feels, like, substantive. Like, none of it feels like story beats. It all just feels like, now we're going over here, now we're going over there, now that's happening over here. And I'm so frustrated. I think I am guilty of trying to... I want it to be a book that it isn't, which isn't fair. But if it's going to be the book that it is, I want it to be better than this. Like... It's not even like... I still don't get Feyre. I can't picture her. I don't understand her. I don't have a grasp on her personality. Her relationship with Tamlin, I could get away with that being driven by, like, a feral, animalistic sexual drive or whatever. And I can feel that Sarah J Maas wants us to feel like Feyre and Rhys have an emotional connection. And he definitely seems like less of a dick. But I just, like... I think I'm just never going to be on board with, like, this kind of age gappy... I just don't believe it. Feyre doesn't feel extraordinary. She doesn't feel extraordinary, and I think that's probably what she's supposed to feel like. Like, she's supposed to be like an ordinary, extraordinary girl, like, you know, that figure from fantasy. But I'm like... She's done extraordinary stuff, but I still have no sense of who she is as a person. Okay, so I'm going to level with you. It's not that I'm not enjoying it, because on a level, I am, but I think constantly stopping and being a bit snarky to you guys is getting in the way a little bit. And also the plot is just moving really quickly, and I do not want this to be what the last video ended up being, like an accidental plot recap. So I'm gonna check in with you less frequently now. And maybe we'll just, like, check in at significant moments, or when there's a natural sort of pause in the narrative. But for now, let me just say, I am getting the ick so thoroughly by how Rhys and Feyre flirt with each other. Like, for 2 people who so clearly have, like, chemistry... when they put those feelings into words, it couldn't sound less sexy. I swear to God. So much shit's gone down, I don't even know where to start. But I think I'm gonna finish it. Maybe with interruptions. And then I'll future Hannah will fill in some of the gaps and explain my journey. The good news is they finally banged. Thank God. Hi. As you can probably tell from like those last couple of clips, I wasn't having a super fun time. Not so much with the book, but with the way I was reading the book when I was doing those updates. And it was kind of pulling me out of it a little bit. So I basically stopped filming up until like the final 80 pages of the book. But I did like make little notes and bits and pieces. I just didn't feel like picking up the phone and recording. So I'm going to fill in the gaps here. I am going to try and keep it light on extraneous detail, but fuck me, so much happens in this book. Like for a plot shy gal, this has been a challenge. So essentially what we get for like this big middle chunk of the book is the inevitable getting together of Rhysand and Feyre through some absolutely classic romance tropes. It's great. It's like a smorgasbord of like romance tropes. And I say that as like not even a romance reader, and even I'm like, ooh, hello trope. So for a while they go down to the summer court. Don't ask me why they need to steal a book. They're hanging out at the summer court. It's very bats at the beach. Feyre's kind of like got this flirty thing going on with the High Lord of Summer, and is like, Rhys is getting like quite obviously jealous. Feyre is not interpreting that correctly because she's a fucking idiot. And then is also getting really jealous that Rhys is flirting with like some other lass at the High Court. So they're just jealously flirting with other people and pretending that they don't have feelings for each other. Then Feyre and Amren go to like steal this bit of the book, nearly drown, bit of a mare, back to Velaris. Essentially, like, the actual plot, aside from the Rhys and Feyre stuff, the actual substantive plot makes no fucking sense to me. So I'm arranging this kind of update around like what it means for Rhys and Feyre, because frankly, I feel like that's how the book was written. So post Summer Court, they're back in Velaris. There's this like magical thing called Starfall that's gonna happen, and it's like Rhys's first one since he was like out from under the mountain. Essentially a load of fucking stars fall, very romantic. Feyre and Rhys are having like deep meaningful chats with each other. Feyre realizes that maybe part of the reason Rhys was getting a bit like jealous and angsty is because she was being really nice and charming with the High Lord of the Summer Court, and she just realized that she is never nice or charming to Rhys. She's like, maybe I should be nice to him. And it's like, yeah, babe, the hot guy might want to give it a go. Possibly before this, or possibly after this, don't ask me. But Rhys has a nightmare that like, apparently he has them loads, and it's like night explodes out of him. And it like, all this darkness is like filling the house that they're in, and Feyre comes and like rescues him, basically like wakes him up, and he's naked, and Feyre is not being respectful. She's trying, but she is looking at that boy with some serious lack of respect.
including getting weirdly hung up on the fact that he has like a night sky tattooed on his knees that reminds her of something. So after we've had those bits, they need to do some more random robbing throughout Prithian. So they go to the Court of Nightmares, and this is, so everyone talks about chapter 55 being the steamy, sexy time, and it is, but I actually thought this bit was a bit more steamy, spicy. Maybe just me. Not literally, but just explain the fucking thing, Hannah. Okay. So they go to the Court of Nightmares. Bad news bears, where all the bad news bears live. And the plan, these 500-year-old like people who have won literal wars before are like, the plan is Feyre and Rhys are basically gonna pretty much put on a sex show for the court, and they're going to be so distracted that Asriel's just going to be able to like go steal this orb that we need. Why do we need the orb? For reasons. And so that is what happens. So Feyre's like sitting on Rhys's lap. She's wearing this like barely a fucking dress piece of fabric, and they engage in some heavy petting, and it's a classic fake dating or fake shagging. So she's just getting very, very, very into it, and she feels that Rhys is getting very, very into it, and there's a ooh, ooh, and then Rhys basically like nearly kills Moore's dad because he calls Feyre a whore. And that's the end of that. Oh, there's like one line during that where basically Feyre wearing her tiny nothing dress obviously can't wear underwear. Obviously not. So as Rhys is like fondling her, he notices finger goes a little too high, and he's like, oh, she seems to be enjoying herself. And he's like, oh, don't worry. It's like, I know, it's just your body reacting. Like, I'm not reading into this. And it's like, you should read into this, Rhys. Next up, they go to the Illyrian camps. Why? To I don't know, to just be in another place and have some forced proximity. Probably. Rhys is trying to teach Feyre like how to like control her powers, because she's got all of these different powers from all of the different courts, and she started getting pretty good at using water, which is like the summer court king guy's high lord, his things like water. And because she was hanging out with him, she kind of like was able to tune into that, and she's pretty good at water work now, but there's a few that like she's not so good at, and they're up in the mountains. And oh, actually before this happened, when they were on their way to the Court of Nightmares, someone tried to shoot them out of the sky using ash arrows, so we know that they're getting like tracked, and maybe that's the reason they went to the Illyrian camps. I don't know. Frankly, if it wasn't about Feyre and Rhys and when are they going to bone, very little attention was paid to the plot. I don't. So they're in the Illyrian camps. Feyre and Rhys fuck off into the high mountains to go like be alone, ostensibly so that Feyre can like unleash her powers. And they get tracked, and Lucian is there. Lucian, Foxboy from the Spring Court, who I have a secret pretty big soft spot for, but it might just be because he's got red hair. And he's like, Feyre babe, oh my god, I am here to rescue you. And Feyre's like, who? What? I don't, thank you so much. I do not require rescuing. I'm pretty happy. Have you seen how hot this guy is? Wow. And Lucian doesn't believe her very much, thinks Rhys has her under some kind of like evil mind control-y thing. And then Feyre does this whole like, no, Rhys, like, I am become darkness. And I forget how they get away, but they get away. Then Then Feyre and Rhysand need somewhere to stay, and they find an inn, and there's only one room left, and it's right at the top, and there's only one bed, and it's really small. So Feyre's like, and they've not really spoken about how they're obviously super into each other based on their little like fake sex show thing that they did for the Court of Nightmares. And so Feyre's like, they have a little chit chat, eat some food. Feyre gets changed while Rhys is getting food. Then Rhys comes back and gets changed, and Feyre's like, I'm not looking at the naked man. I'm not looking at the naked man. And then she's like, okay, cool, so we should go to sleep then. And he's like, yeah, we should definitely go to sleep. And Feyre's cold, because it's cold in the mountains, and her hair is wet. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna come warm you up, but like nothing freaky. You're shivering and it's annoying. So, and he like wraps one of his big bat wings around her, because I keep forgetting this man has wings. So he's like there like warming her, and Feyre's like backing into him a bit. She's being like, well, maybe before we go to sleep. And he's like, what do you want, Feyre? And she replies, I just want some fun. Like, I just want some fun. I just want some distraction, please. And Rhys, there's like this moment where he's like low-key a bit crestfallen, because let's not forget, this man has been a sex slave to an evil woman for 50 years. So just being like, hey, could you just like get me off? I fancy a bit of fun. Might hurt his feelings a bit, Feyre. She doesn't mean it, obviously, but you know. So Rhys does a good job. They don't have sex, but she has a good time. And he's like, no, we're not gonna have sex here and now. We can't have sex here and now, because I don't have a room. Where would my wings go? If I'm gonna perform, boy's gonna need some space, okay? And we're like, oh, okay, Rhys, all right. But yeah, so she has an orgasm, and then she has a nice little nap, and they wake up in the morning, and it's like, chill. So then we're out and about in the mountains, and Rhys gets like snatched. They're like ambushed by a load of highburn soldiers, maybe Springcourt guys. They take Rhys, he gets like shot with like a load of fucking arrows. It is not a good time. He is in a fucking state, and they get separated. But Feyre, remember, is a tracker and also low-key a superhero. So she goes, saves him, grabs him, brings him to a cave, is trying to take care of him. It's very Katniss and Peter. And she kind of like sorts him out in a cave as best she can, and she's like, we're in the middle of the fucking mountains. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help him. I'm not strong enough. I can't carry him. I can't winnow, which is like their jumpy through space and time thing. And so she's like, what do I know how to do? Catch the cereal. So she goes and catches the cereal, which, if you remember from book one, is like some like gothy, creepy creature that tells the truth, basically. So she captures the cereal and goes, how can I help Rhysand? And the cereal's like, oh, no probs, babe. Just give your mate some of your blood, okay? And she's like, sure, just give him some of my blood, mate. Who, what? Mate? And so she goes back to Rhys, and she gives him some of her blood. And he starts to get better, and she loses her shit, and she's like, we're fucking mates? Did you know that we were like fatally bound together? And he's like, okay, so don't be mad, but yeah, I kind of knew. And she's not having any of it. She is not happy because, you know, this is a woman who's been quite thoroughly manipulated by a lot of these people, and, you know, she was just starting to feel emotionally vulnerable with him, and it turns out he was withholding information, and Reese, not good. So, but also, was she in a headspace to hear it? Well, maybe not. So they get back to the camp. Like, Reese manages to gather a bit of strength, gets them back to the camp. Feyre grabs Moore and is like, you are taking me somewhere the fuck out of here. You're not telling him. I want to hear a fucking word. I am livid with you all. So she goes off to a cabin in the woods where she is basically grumpy for 3 days. And while she's being grumpy for 3 days, she finds some paint and basically just paints the whole. This is like their like special safe haven in the mountains. It's like definitely like an inner circle thing. And Feyre, because she's a toddler, is like, I am going to paint all over this. Like, this place that is yours, I'm just gonna make it fucking mine now. So that's cool. I also, I'm very tickled by the group of people in the ACOTAR fan base who are convinced that Feyre is a really, really bad artist. I subscribe to this too. I love the idea that she talks really passionately about painting and the idea that she might just be really fucking shit. Which I think holds up, because when Moore comes back, she's like, oh, babe, you've been busy. Because she's just painted all the fucking walls. She's like painted eyes above the wall. It's a whole thing. And then finally, there's a knock on the door, and it's Reese. And he's just been flying around because they've still, Highburn, maybe, people have a trace on Reese's magic, so he's not been able to use his magic. So he's just been like flying around like old school fashion, like flying around the mountains trying to find Feyre. So he rocks up at the door and she's like, come in, do you want some soup? And he's like, you want to give me soup? I actually can't remember if it's soup, but let's go with soup. And Feyre's like, why are you acting like I just proposed to you? And he's like, oh, well, like, it's, you don't know the rules because you're not really Fae, but, you know, apparently it's like a whole thing where if, like, the first time a woman offers or makes food for her mate, that's like solidifying the bond. It's like when they accept it. So Feyre offering to give him food is like her being like, okay, we're mates. And she's like, oh, well then, you better explain yourself first, sir, and then maybe you will get some soup afterwards. And so we get a whole chapter of basically ACOTAR and ACOMAF from Reese's perspective in like one chapter, and it turns out he had been seeing visions of her life in the human realm for years when he was under the mountain, and it gave him a lot of peace and a lot of solace. And it was also must have been a reciprocal thing because Feyre painted this like night sky on a drawer, because of course she did, because painting houses is apparently her flex. And so she did that like prior to any of the books happening, and she never really knew where that vision of the night sky came from, and turns out it came from Reese. And so he's been in love with her since like under the mountain, and when he stumbled at the end of ACOTAR, right before Feyre went back to the Spring Court, then that was him realizing that she was his mate. So right at the point when she had just nearly fucking died, or had literally died to save Tamlin, he was like, oh, okay, she's my mate and she's just died to like save that other guy, and she's about to go marry him. Cool. And he has sort of wanted to tell her about the bond, but hasn't known how to because he thought she would resist it, and he thought she still loved Tamlin. And he was like, you know, like the other night you said you just wanted fun. Like, I thought that's just what you wanted from me. And I'm like, how can you be so old and so stupid? And so he gives his whole speech. It's the moment where everyone's like, if you weren't on Team Rhys, you're on Team Rhys now. And she gives him some soup. And then chapter 55. Chapter 55 is basically a full chapter of them shagging. I mean, like, it was nice, it was fine. It was shagging. It was kind of like inevitable, like that scene had to be there. But like, it's funny that it's got this reputation for being like a really smutty book series when there's actually only really like those 3 scenes that I mentioned in the Court of Nightmares, the inn, and then this one. And you know, but they're blissed out. They are like obsessed with each other. So they're there in the cabin being like all 100% blissed out, and then randomly Feyre's like, oh hey, quick question, what about contraception? And I'm like, this is a really smart question to ask after you've been fucking each other's brains out for 24 hours. But they basically are like, oh, babies are really precious because like we don't get a lot of babies in the Fae Kingdom. Rhys is like, if we ever had a kid, I would be like so down for that, but also like if it's just me and you forever, like that is chill by me. And Feyre's like, given the fact that we're only 2 books into a 5-book series, maybe let's not have a baby yet, which means that there's gonna be a fucking baby, isn't there? Like, we don't randomly talk about contraception unless we know there's gonna be a fucking baby cropping up at some point. And then so they're blissed out, and then all of a sudden it's like Sarah J Maas goes, oh shit, the actual plot of this book. So we go back to Valeris. And okay, so the orb that they stole from the Court of Nightmares was so that they could show the queens. I told you I wasn't going to do extraneous plot. This is so much extraneous plot, but it's really hard to talk about my feelings about the book without telling you what was happening. So sorry, this is what we're doing. So yeah, they showed the queens Valeris in the orb because the orb tells the truth. Apparently also Moore's like superpower is just truth, and Sarah J Maas doesn't explain that at all. Like, she always tells the truth, she can get the truth out of people, she can make things be the truth, like, sidebar. But yeah, they have to, basically they don't trust Rhys, they think he's a baddie, so they're like, prove that you're not. And he's like, okay, well here's a vision of this whole city that's bohemian and artistic, and everyone here is really happy, and they think I'm a super great High Lord, so you can look at this in the orb. The queens go, great, thanks for that. Everyone goes back to Valeris, and then the queens sell them out. So the queens make a deal with Highburn, and then Highburn soldiers attack Valeris, this city that has been like so fucking safe, gets like absolutely decimated. Feyre's there, Rhys isn't there, like Cassian's trying to like get Feyre to like go and like hide, and she's like, I'm super fucking gifted, so stop talking to me like I'm not really special. So she like fights a load of the Highburn soldiers by like conjuring like water wolves and water birds. Yeah, Sarah J Maas doesn't really go into much detail on like how the magic systems work, but she conjures some water wolves, and she fights for her city. These are her people. She feels connected to them now through Rhys, and it feels like her home, and she fights for them, and including she kills the Atta, the really scary thing that I low-key can't remember what the Atta is. I just remember that it's bad. So they do fight back. It ends up not being as bad as it could be. We don't lose any key players on the goodies side. And then Amren finally translates the Book of Breathing, which is apparently what she's been doing this whole time. So the book that they stole, that they were getting off the queens and the Summer Court, Amren has translated it because it's in this like super old language that only Amryn speaks because she's some kind of weird, creepy person from another universe, dimension, time. She's special. So she's finally translated it, and then they go to Highburn, and I think that's where I start talking again. See you after this all fucking wraps up.
I don't know what I was expecting from a mythical object called the cauldron, but I was expecting it to be a bit more than just a fucking cauldron. Also, like, bathtub sized. Fuck. Uh-oh, Jurian has already been revived. And like, there's so much fannying on in this book that I have forgotten why they wanted this fucking cauldron to begin with. Wasn't it to stop Jurian being revived? Or is it just because they don't want Highburn to have it? I don't remember. If Azriel gets killed, I'm gonna be fucking livid because he's my boy. He's my boy. Lucian and Tamlin are there? Oh, excuse me? Did I tell you, by the way, where we are? Oh, we're in Highburn. It is bad news bears. Bad news bears. So, king of not understanding that no means no, Tam Tam, has been working with the King of Highburn. And in return for the King of Highburn giving Feyre back to Tamlin, Tamlin's just gonna like open up the Spring Court and allow Highburn's armies in to Prithian to cause absolute carnage and mayhem. All to get back his ex-girlfriend who doesn't want him. Fuck me. And the King of Highburn is going to break the bond between Rhys and Feyre, but I think they just mean like the tattoo bond, because I don't think they know that they're like bonded. I'm stressed. I'm very stressed. It's just astounding how little people skills Tamlin has. Like, just commanding her. Like, that's gonna fucking work, mate. Well, now they know about the mating bond. Tamlin still just wants to believe that Feyre doesn't know what she's talking about. What a catch that man is. And the King of Highburn has Feyre's sisters. Sarah J Maas is putting like 300 pages of plot in like 5 fucking pages. What is going on? It's a fucking hot mess. It's a hot mess. Her sisters are there. They've gone in the cauldron. They've come out Fae-like. Lucian's bonded to Elaine. Cassian clearly bonded to Nesta, but not announced, but clearly. Just give me a fucking minute, SJM. A fucking minute. She's like exploded with light, Feyre, and she's pretending that she's come out of some spell and she's going back to Tamlin and she's saying to the King of Highburn to break the bond. Random chapter from Brusan's perspective. Weird. Finished. She bloody loves to drag us back to the Spring Court at the end of a book, doesn't she? So Feyre has gone back to the Spring Court as a spy and is pretending that things are all good with Tamalam. And Rhys has made her High Lady of the Night Court. before they were all captured, snuck away, and it wasn't a marriage. He's like basically made her his equal, something that Tamlin said he would never do, could never do, wasn't the done thing. But Rhys, because he's a true feminist icon, did. And nuts, just fucking nuts. I feel like all her attention in this book was on getting Feyre and Rhys together. And the plot was an absolute fucking state. And I think that's why it was so confusing at the end, because you didn't understand any of the other characters, really. Like, all these extra, like, political players. I keep forgetting where Highburn is, what it is, if it's Fae or human, like, just nightmare. But I think the next book, if we go on this journey again, is going to be more like Game of Thronesy. Like, I think it's going to be all politics. Over to future me. Wow, who knows? Who knows what I'm going to say about this?
So there we have it. Yeah, the plot makes no fucking sense. No fucking sense. And I think it's because, I think I said it in an earlier clip, like, it does, the whole book just felt like engineering moments for Rhys and Feyre's relationship to develop. And so all of the actual, like, mechanical plot, the questy sort of adventure-y fantasy, frankly, part of the book just felt really manufactured and tenuous. And I think that wasn't helped also by the fact that outside of the sexual tension, I really didn't feel like there was much tension in this book until really right towards the end. And I think it's because the threat was quite, we were hearing it quite secondhand. Like, Feyre wasn't encountering the threat in the same way that in book one, where she's like under the mountain and she's doing all the tasks and stuff, it's right there and you're seeing and experiencing that terror with Feyre. Whereas most of this book is like people telling Feyre, oh yeah, there's gonna be a war, Hybern's gonna do this, and it's all happening over there and we have to stop him. And you're like, okay, we have to stop him, but it never really felt like an urgent, tense thing that they actually had to do. So, like, it definitely did feel like it was Rhys and Feyre hunting for trinkets. Like, just sort of like gallivanting around Prythian, being like, oh, we need to rob this, oh, we need to rob that, and everything feeling really tenuous. And I thought it was going to build towards something that would make all of that feel necessary. But again, like, the actual stuff that was happening ended up being of really little narrative consequence, because they're doing all of that shit to stop Hybern using the cauldron to bring back Jurian. And when we get to Hybern, he's already done it. So all of the running around and the getting of the orb and the getting of the book and the getting of the other half of the book and the translating it from Amren's weird old language, all of that is moot because they were too late. And which is just narratively, like, I think, like, thank God it did feel like the romance payoff was there, because if that wasn't there, this book would be such an extraordinary letdown. Because you're like, it feels like you're gearing up to this big confrontation that then happens like lightning fast. I had to read those chapters like 2 or 3 times when they're in Hybern, and even then I'm like, I'm not really following what's actually happening here. And yeah, like, just so much of the plot felt just a bit surplus to requirement for what we actually ended up getting out of it. But that being said, I'm fucking in. I'm in, and oh, I'm so annoyed. I'm so annoyed that I'm in. You've got no idea how much I wanted to be. I wanted to be above this book, man. And it got me. It got me. It's not well written. It's not a good book, but I am invested now. Also, just a few more final observations. I get that the whole mate bond thing is for a lot of people where that romance driver comes from, you know, that like fated lovers thing. But I do think combining how much of a turnaround Tamlin's character had in this book, where he's just like an outright piece of shit. I assume he's gonna get a redemption arc at some point, but like at the minute, like he's an asshole. And Feyre is bonded to Rhys, so that it makes it quite a neat and easy step from Tamlin to Rhys, because he's being a dick, and oh, by the way, I am fated to be with this person. We share a bond like no other bond that I could have with any other person. So it's like, just as like the tension in a romantic triangle, like it was a bit, well, yeah, I guess that's what's gonna happen. And what else? Who else is in this book? Yeah, Cassian and Nesta, they're gonna get together, aren't they? And then I guess that would free up Asriel and Moore to get together, because I wasn't buying the weird like throupley dynamic that Cassian, Asriel, and Morrigan have. So I'm assuming that things are going to go that way. The Lucian being bonded to Elaine thing. I thought mate bonds were like quite rare. I vaguely remember from book one, Tamlin saying like, oh no, like people get married all the time who like aren't actually bonded. Like not everyone finds their mate or is bonded to their mate or like whatever. But it really does feel like absolutely every named character is gonna end up mated to someone at some point. Yeah, what the fuck is Feyre gonna do at the Spring Court now? Because is she gonna actually pretend to be back with Tamlin? Like, is she gonna sleep with him? I guess we will. I guess we will find out soon, and we will find out soon, because I have put a hold on for book 3 at my local library. There's a bit of a wait on it because it's a popular book, and yeah, I guess I will see you for another one of these or something similar for book 3, which is, what is it? A Court of Wings and Ruin. Wings and Ruin, is that the next one? Yeah. Okay, so man, if you're still here, thanks for coming on this journey with me. Fuck it.